wholesale value declines have been stronger than what we normally see for much of the last 2 months. This is a quote directly from Jeremy Robb, who is the Senior Director of Economic and Industry Insights over at Cox Automotive. You see, it's that time of month again where we have new wholesale and used vehicle data regarding prices, inventory, and whether or not the current car market favors the buyer or the seller. And I'm going to be honest, the data is looking good. But before we dive into the actual data, I do want to offer one gigantic caveat to all of the data points that we're going to be discussing in this video, and that is the CDK outage. In June of this year, CDK Global, which is a major software provider for dealerships, had a cyber attack. The attack started on June 19th, and it affected the systems of over 15,000 dealerships. And according to reports, systems weren't back on until the 4th of July. This was just under 2 weeks where dealerships were absolutely crippled by this software outage. And given the fact that this system outage and cyber attack coincided with the end of month and end of quarter in June and Q2 of 2024, you very literally couldn't ask for a worse time for this type of thing to happen. I mention this because the CDK outage is absolutely going to have an impact into the data that we're going to review today. And it absolutely had an impact in vehicle inventory, sales data, as well as prices in some regard. And while I think long-term this really means little to nothing for the car market as a whole, I know that if I didn't mention this in this video, I would be called out about it in the comments. So there's my caveat. The Manheim Used Vehicle Value Index fell to 196.1. This is a decline of 8.9% from a year ago. And you can see that we're pretty close to crossing over to that pre-pandemic level, but we aren't quite there yet. According to this graph from Manheim and Cox Automotive, you can see that the last time the Manheim Used Vehicle Value Index was at this level was either at the end of Q1 in 2020 or it was at the beginning of Q2 in 2020. So we aren't quite at pre-pandemic levels yet, but we are definitely getting close. And truthfully, we'll be there before we know it. As for the 3-year-old index, which is an aggregate of 3-year-old cars within the used car market, this index fell by 1.5% in the month of June. And MMR retention fell to 97.8%, which I'm going to be honest is the lowest that I've seen it at in a very long time. Now, the MMR retention is a metric that we use in order to figure out if cars are selling for a discount or if they're selling for above MSRP. If the MMR retention is at 100%, it means that cars are selling for their true MMR value. There is no discount, but there is no markup. If MMR retention is at above 100%, so say 101%, it means that cars are being sold for above their MMR values. But on the flip side, if MMR retention is below 100%, it means that cars are selling for a discount. And according to Manheim and Cox Automotive, MMR retention is at 97.8%, which means that cars are selling for a pretty good discount, at least in relation to what we've seen in the last couple of years. The average daily sales conversion rate rose to 57.4%, which is a rise over the previous month and higher than normal for the same time of year. For comparison, the daily sales conversion rate in 2023 and in 2022 was right at about 51%, which means that the car market is favoring the buyer more today in 2024 than it has been in previous years, which is excellent news. We can see a breakdown from Manheim and Cox by segment, and you can see that the overall car market has declined by 8.9%, which again is what I mentioned earlier. But the cars with the largest declines include compact cars, which have declined by 12%, mid-size cars, which have declined by 11%, and the rest of the different segments are sort of in similar ballparks. Luxury cars have declined by 9.9%, SUVs and crossovers by 9.3%, and pickups by 8.3%. And if we look at non-EVs versus electric vehicles, you can see that electric vehicles are still depreciating at a much faster rate compared to gas vehicles. In fact, EVs have depreciated by 16.6%, while their non-EV counterparts have depreciated by 9.5%. So if you're wanting to buy a car that's going to hold its value, well, getting an EV probably isn't your best bet. But now let's take a look at CarGurus Used Vehicle Value Index, because we can take a look at wholesale prices all day long, but unless those prices are translating to discounts for consumers, well, it doesn't matter a whole lot, and CarGurus gives us a much better idea of what cars are really being priced for in the consumer market. Now, looking at CarGurus, I've taken the graph and I've honed it into 1 year. So from July 6, 2023 to July 6, 2024, and you can see that overall the graph looks really strong. You guys may recall that if you've seen my market update videos, which I do every single month, if you've seen the last few months, you've probably heard me say that car prices in the short term had gone up. Mid Q2, car prices did go up a bit, specifically at the end of April and really into the end of May. But you can see here that as we headed into the end of second quarter, car prices began to fall, which is exactly what I predicted. And you can see here that car prices are almost back to where they were at the end of March, beginning of April, before car prices went up temporarily. Overall, this graph is a great sign, and you can see that car prices are in fact falling. If we look over at body styles, this is more good news, because if you recall from my video back in June and in May, many of the 30-day data was showing appreciation. So it was showing that car prices were in fact going up over the last 30 days, and in some cases in the last 90 days as well. But it does look as though this has turned around, and this is great news. And if we scroll down to individual makes, while there are a handful of different makes that have seen some appreciation in the last 30 days, the vast majority of cars out there have depreciated. Especially whenever we're looking at the normal everyday cars, we're seeing depreciation pretty much across the board, with the exception of Toyota, which has appreciated. But in the case of the other makes and models that have appreciated, it's Scion, Rolls-Royce, McLaren, Mini, Hummer, oddly enough Dodge and Fiat, but definitely the major players here are seeing depreciation, with Fisker Automotive seeing some pretty extreme depreciation of 12%. I wonder why that's the case. Overall, this is more good news, and it really supports the fact that that uptick that we saw at the beginning of the second quarter was really temporary, and as we headed into the end of the second quarter, car price declines began to accelerate, which is great news all the way around, and we absolutely are trending in the right direction. But one thing that I really like to keep in mind, especially with these types of market videos, is that we can talk about how much a car is worth all day long, but if somebody isn't willing to pay that amount, then the car really isn't worth that amount at all. And ultimately, a car is only worth what somebody is willing to pay for it. And so the last platform that I want to look at is Cars.com, which gives us a great indicator in how long are cars sitting on dealership lots before they're sold, how often or by how much do these cars need to be reduced in price in order to get sold, and once they finally are sold, what roughly is the price point that they were sold at. And so here at Cars.com, we're going to be looking at some used vehicles that reflect what could be found in the 3-year-old index or around the 3-year-old index. We're going to be looking at minimum year of 2020, so cars 2020 to 2024 models, priced between 30 and 50 grand with 60,000 miles or less. And you can see right out of the gate that there are a ton of cars that fall within these parameters, but the question is, are these cars being reduced in price quite frequently? Right out of the gate, you can see some cars that have been reduced in price. This 2021 Chevrolet Silverado 1500, it's priced for 30 grand. It has 51,000 miles, and while it's advertised to have a $500 price drop, but if you scroll down, you can see that this car has been listed for 54 days and has actually been reduced in price by 2 grand. We have this 2020 Dodge Charger, which is listed for $30,499. And if we scroll down, you can see that this car has been listed for 53 days and it's seen $2,500 in total price reductions. The Jeep Wrangler, which is a high inventory vehicle. Jeep falls under the Stellantis umbrella, and Stellantis pretty much across the board has an inventory problem. This car is listed for $38,971, and you can see here that it's been listed for 68 days, and it has seen a whopping $5,027 in price reductions, basically seeing multi-month price reductions since it was listed back in May. A 2022 Lincoln Corsair Reserve, this is another car that has high inventory, and thus we should expect to see pretty good discounts. This car is listed for just under 33 grand, and you can see that if we scroll down in just the 13 days that it's been listed for sale, it's been marked down over $2,700. A 2022 Audi Q7, this is another higher inventory car. It's listed for $38,250, and in the 62 days that it's been listed for sale, it's seen $4,250 in total price reductions. But to be honest, it isn't just the higher inventory cars that are seeing price reductions, and not all high inventory vehicles are seeing large price reductions either. Whenever I was looking at Cars.com across hundreds of different makes, models, prices, inventory levels, I found that price reductions are kind of all over the place. For example, let's look at Toyota. Toyota is one of the automakers that have extremely low inventory relative to other automakers. And so theoretically speaking, Toyota shouldn't be giving any discounts. And if they are giving them, they should be quite small. But if we look at this 2022 Toyota Tacoma TRD Sport, which is listed for just under 40 grand, this car has been sitting on dealership lots for 40 days and it's seen $500 in total price reductions. While this 2023 Toyota Tacoma TRD Off-Road, which is a different trim model, it's listed for $44,500 and it's been marked down nearly $1,500 in the 59 days that it's been for sale. Or we have a 2021 Honda Pilot, which is listed for $30,552. Honda is another automaker with very low inventory relative to competitors, and this car has a price reduction of about $1,100 in the 26 days that it's been listed for sale. When it comes to price reductions, you are most likely going to see better price reductions with automakers that have higher inventory, but it doesn't necessarily mean that all of the high inventory automakers that you look at are going to be giving large price reductions, and it also doesn't mean that low inventory automakers aren't giving price reductions either. Price reductions are sort of all over the place, and it does depend on how long the vehicle has been sitting for, where the vehicle is located, as well as the specific make, model, and even trim level. And so if you are someone who is wanting to buy a car and you don't think that you can get a price reduction because you're wanting to buy something like a Toyota, Lexus, or Honda, definitely don't have that mindset because these automakers absolutely are giving price reductions. Or on the flip side, if you're looking at buying one of these higher inventory automakers, think Stellantis, Audi, Lincoln, Ford, definitely do not under any circumstances buy these cars at an above MSRP price. Instead, you should be getting a fat discount. I have even found that on Facebook Marketplace, while it still is difficult to find extremely below market value deals, I am finding just in general more discounted cars today than I found this time last year, which is great news across the board. And so what all of this data tells us is a few very clear things. Number one is that the car market is absolutely dropping. Even after we saw that slight increase in the spring, that increase has declined once again, and we are back to the declines that we should have been seeing throughout this entire year. Not only is the car market dropping, but we are slowly but surely returning to pre-pandemic levels, and I firmly believe that we will be there before we even know it. But it is important to note that these pre-pandemic levels are really from a metric perspective. For example, the Manheim Used Vehicle Value Index, rather than actual used car prices, which are still a ways away from where they were pre-2020. And to be honest, I'm doubtful that we'll ever return to those levels from a price perspective, given the fact that new cars in general have gone up so much in price since then. I think that in this car market, there are two things that are incredibly important. Number one is patience, waiting until you find the right deal at the right price. And number two, being an educated buyer, because no matter how much the car market drops, dealerships are still shady. But like always, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it, so make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell, and I'll see you guys in the next video.